Undiplomatic is an unscripted and unfiltered podcast hosted by Hyatt-Khan that will explore the intersection of business, politics and culture in Slovakia with a host of high-level guests across the spectrum telling their stories. Slovakia can't be the host of something of this magnitude. What did you tell them?
The ambition sounded arrogant. To some, the ambition sounded unrealistic. So we wanted to prove that you can actually influence things. The brand of Globsec shows where the ambition of Slovakia could be. Maybe physically small nation, but with big ideas that is not fixed in the mental boundaries of the past, but is opening up the mindset. We have a lot of potential. We just need to open that mindset. How AI is changing almost everything. It's going to disrupt so many industries. It's going to disrupt geopolitics. This will be basically end of the state and the government as we know it. You cannot control things that have no boundaries in AI technologies. They have no physical boundaries.
So we're going to have more chaos? Because the experts are saying lean in towards AI.
Dynamics of world in technology is huge, but the dynamics in our governments is very slow, and we need to close that gap.
As a Slovak brand, you're moving to Prague. There's embassies, there's government. How does the business model actually work?
Globsec has developed into a major international brand. We have offices not only in Bratislava, in Vienna, in Brussels, in Kiev, and in the United States. We are chosen by White House and NATO to be the main European partner of the NATO summit.
Slovak established brand is invited to organize events by the White House and NATO. That requires a certain level of acknowledgement. I am excited to be back with a brand new episode of Undiplomatic, and after a brief hiatus, I'm happy very much to welcome Robert Vass, founder and president of Globsec. Robert, many thanks and welcome. Thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy I can be here.
Good. Now, first things first is one of the things I'm quite confused about is I say Globsec, other people say Globsec. How do we say it properly?
It depends whether you say it in Slovak or English, but we say Globsec.
Okay, Globsec.
Well, many people say Globsec.
Well, because I spend time with John Barter, obviously, who works closely with you, and he says Globsec.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is it Globsec or is it Globsec? But anyway, both are very welcome, I hear. Well, I was telling you a little bit off air that my job here, other than working for the Council of Slovak Exporters, is to try and tell the story of Slovakia. And many years ago, I was at a government forum in in Dubai, and people were talking about the Globsec conference that was happening in Bratislava. And this was way before I even moved to Slovakia. And it was really the only brand of Slovak nature that I'd ever heard about. Of course, you know, I'm married to a Slovak. You were at university with my wife. But that must fill you with some sense of pride that people are sitting in Dubai and thousands of miles away, there is a conference, a brand that you have created, Robert Vass, while you were at university, this was percolating in your mind, that is on the lips of people at what possibly one of the most important government forums. How did Globsec start?
Very complex question. How much time do we have?
We have as much time. You have more important people to see than me today, I'm sure.
No, but thank you for recognizing the brand of Globsec, and it's great that you've heard it way before you moved to Slovakia. And I'm hearing this many times that Globsec has become one of the defining brands of Slovakia. 20 years ago, it was 2005, when I established Globsec together with my friends in the university from Banska Bystrica. And it was exactly a year after we joined the EU and NATO. Right. And many of the diplomats thought, okay, we have achieved the biggest goal in the recent history. And it was sure. Definitely. Joining NATO in EU was important. But also we felt that it's not enough, because it's just a tool how you can influence things, how you can make an impact internationally. So we established Globsec to bring the world to Bratislava and to increase the voice of Slovakia and Central European countries in European and transatlantic affairs. We didn't want to be just a passive passenger in the back seat, not a back seat, but we wanted to help to contribute to the international conversation and debate. What kind of Europe, what kind of world would like to have. And 20 years later, I think it was a good decision because we have been able to host in Bratislava people that would never come otherwise. And we have created friendships for this country that go well beyond any political cycle. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was very important and defining.
And there's a couple of things that I want to pick up on and that you mentioned there. I'll come back to NATO and the significance of what that represented to Slovakia. And some see that was job done then, and the relationship with America hasn't really developed further since. Some could argue, some critics have already said that. But what I'm most interested in is that it takes a level of confidence to think that Slovak, because I've been in and around the Slovak business industry for a while, and there's quite a reservation in the Slovak mindset. Would you say that you were arrogant a little bit, or confident, super confident, which was not something that you thought, I'm going to bring the world to Slovakia. I'm going to bring Schallenberg, Macron, David Cameron, the Pope. I'm going to bring Zelensky. You had to have this in your mind already. People must have been telling you, you're crazy. You can't do this. Slovakia can't be the host of something of this magnitude. What did you tell them?
I've been hearing this very often at the beginning. And to some, the ambition sounded arrogant. Yeah. To some, the ambition sounded unrealistic. But what we created was a real dedication and a long-term dedication to achieve that goal. And I didn't agree with opinion that was quite common and often, that the world is being decided somewhere else, in the big capitals. We have no impact and no influence on the world. So we wanted to prove that you can actually influence things, even if you're a small country. You can do things, and there were a lot of inspirations. You see small European countries like Netherlands, basically the size of Slovakia. Of course, they have more inhabitants, but huge impact. Denmark, Finland, but now Estonia. So it's rather the mental boundaries that the nations sometimes put on itself, believing that it's small. I think that the greatness of a nation is not defined by number of inhabitants or square kilometers, but the greatness of a nation is defined by the ambition and by the ability to go after that ambition. And I think we have, as Globsec, contributed a little bit on showing where Slovakia could be if it would be more self-confident and more self-confident to achieve things that could be global.
Super. There's a great soundbite in there. I'm sure we're gonna clip that later for sure. The idea of a nation having that ambition is something that you mentioned. Holland, you mentioned Denmark, you mentioned Finland, Norway also. These are all countries, and with all due respect to Slovakia, that have tangible exports. They have established businesses. The world listens. The Dutch were very quick in the 60s and 70s to speak English. They internationalized very quickly, as did the Benelux region. Estonia did the e-Estonia thing. They all hedged their bets on trying to shout. Smaller country shout louder. In fact, that's the e-Estonia motto. Yeah. The smaller you are, the bigger you shout. That's something that's desperately missing here. Do you feel, in fact, that Globsec may be a little bit too big for Slovakia? Or did you feel that maybe you were shaping influence around the region, but not enough in the home country?
There is partially truth in what you're saying, because I think that 20 years later, as we join NATO and EU, still I think it's a prevailing mindset in Slovakia that this is a small country and basically we want to influence things here at home and don't care too much about the big things, or they are happening anyway, whether we contribute or not. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But
every year I see you and I bump into you, and I know it's never a good time to talk to you at the conference because your mind's a million miles away and you've got so many things to consider. But you always spare a moment to say, this, what people should appreciate it a little bit more, what you're doing for the country, and the fact that you put it on the map. You feel, I mean, obviously there's a sense of self-satisfaction. And part of the success of Globsec, and I've worked with your team, I've had your analysts in my university classes, John, of course, with people in your own office. Everybody is dedicated to the cause. So there's a high level of professionalism which you need and necessarily require to deliver a world-class event. In fact, I can say there are only 3 world-class events that I've attended in this region. Globsec is one. Slovakia Tech, which is the brainchild of Juraj Miška, which is always in Košice. And then I'd like to think that our Visegrad for Business Conference is starting to create that kind of platform on a smaller level, because we managed to unite 4 countries, even though there's political difference. But you have this dedication, this professionalism that, honestly, it could be matched in London. It could be matched in Munich. And I feel that perhaps you don't get the credit internally that you should. Is that something that bothers you, or you're happy enough that the conference delivers on what it's supposed to?
Thank you for recognizing the impact of Globsec. You know, the satisfaction I'm getting when I organize the Globsec forum is the feedback we are getting after the forum. And when I see that the news from the conference is spreading across the world, when I see that we not only hosted Macron, but that his speech and what he said in Bratislava is repeated all over again, and that is changing the foreign policy of France, and basically he changed the narrative in Europe, and he did it in Bratislava. So they are referring to the Bratislava and the Globsec speech. It's a huge reference. For example, the Indian foreign minister, when he spoke at Globsec, just guess how many viewers his video had?
Probably 50, 60 million.
Well, around 100 million.
Wow.
Around 100 million. So this is a scale that goes well beyond our thinking in 5 million in Slovakia.
Yeah.
But when you look at the scale in India, it's just 1/10. It's 10%. But still, the reach we are creating every year, when I get back the press clippings, is like a Harry Potter book. Really, it's like in 50, 60 countries of the world referred to Bratislava and Globsec in a positive way.
Of course.
So not many events on a regular base can create that kind of impact.
It's interesting there, just to say that the foreign minister of India turned around and then the viral clip was saying that I don't know why Europe thinks that that their problems are the world's problems to inherit, which was a very good soundbite that he made, and now that went viral everywhere. And there's a truth in that. We're pretty selfish in Europe, and we assume that the world should listen to us because we're the most westernized democratic environment, even though that's not always the case, as we see every day. I'm going to move away a little bit from the impact of Globsec. I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneur mindset, because Globsec's a business. It's a hard business to run. The announcement is that you're moving to Prague. Look forward to joining you in Prague. That must take some logistical elements as well. So take away the fact that you're kind of like a think tank, you're policy shape ideators, you are driving the narrative for transatlantic security and Central European security, all the sexy stuff that we like on the brochures. But now, as a Slovak brand, you're moving to Prague. How is the business model? How does it work in terms of, you know, what it is, these moving parts? You know, there's protocol, there's embassies, there's government, there's stipends, there's sponsorship, there is private sector donations. How does the business model actually work? And how do you get your head around creating, essentially, it's a moving part of so many constituent parts?
This is another very complex question, but in 20 years, Globsec...
Sorry, it's a public holiday.
Globsec has developed into a major international brand. We have offices not only in Bratislava. Here is the headquarters, and the headquarters stays here. We have office in Bratislava, in Vienna. We have office in Brussels, and we have established office in Kiev recently, and in the United States. Actually, in the United States, we have our sister organization or legal entity that we created, Globsec US Foundation. We have created a strong board of Globsec International Board, also international advisory board. So we are bringing together a very strong international group. This is number one. Number two, we are increasingly doing events and conferences outside of Slovakia. So we've done something in Vienna. We are
Danube Tech.
the Danube Tech Valley Summit. In the United States, we are chosen by White House and NATO to be the main European partner of the NATO summit and the main conference that is being organized at the NATO summit.
For our listeners here, the Slovak established brand is invited and orchestrated to organize events by the White House and NATO. I think that requires a certain level of acknowledgement as well, right? I mean, there are no other Slovak brands who I'm aware, or Slovak registered brands or Slovak companies that have that kind of influence. That's incredible.
Not only Slovak, but we are the only European partner. So there are no other European partners to the main conference at the NATO summit, only Globsec, which is a recognition, I would say, not only for Slovakia, but this is a recognition of the brand that is Europe-wide or global. So we've learned how to do things outside this country. We've learned how to use the brand, the positive brand. Actually, in Prague, we are going to sign the Memorandum of Understanding with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We are receiving a lot of support from the president and the government. They're seeing it as an opportunity for Czech Republic to make an international impact. And we are taking it as a Slovak brand that is expanding.
Okay.
That is expanding. The brand stays here. It is still Slovak. It is international as well, but with the Slovak roots. And we'll continue to organize in Slovakia Tatra Summit. So we are diversifying. So we'll do the International Security Conference that will be moving from city to city. So changing the concept a little bit. We keep the Tatra Summit in Slovakia, which is focused more on economic issues. And
I guess the harder question from this is, and perhaps maybe this is one that you feel uncomfortable answering, is that the flagship is moving. And I know it's easy for PR people to say, well, we're an evolving brand, we have to take it on the road. But there must be a sense that, okay, maybe the political climate isn't conducive, but you've survived all the political cycles. This shouldn't be, and you mentioned that earlier, that, you know, you remain superfluous to political cycles, that perhaps the flagship is moving to Prague. Is that more of a statement? Is that we don't want to house it here anymore, or you feel that the Czech Republic, and obviously your the president has been a long time advisor, and part of the brand as well prior to taking and still to this day. Is it a statement against Slovakia, or is it a statement that we're trying to move the brand and evolve the brand by taking it to our cousins next door in Prague?
Look, I would say it's a combination of factors. Of course, we are evaluating the political climate in Europe, in Slovakia, and in Central Europe. And we are trying to see where the brand and where Globsec could have a greater impact. And by diversifying our activities across Central Europe, but also in Europe and the United States, we are decreasing the political risks, but also we are trying to increase the impact. And I think that Prague right now is the city where we can have a greater impact for the discussions that we are having. It's not a statement against anybody. On the contrary, Slovakia can even benefit from it because, as you said, the brand is Slovak. It is a growing international brand. And if we want to increase the impact, we also need to be agile and move and make sure that this impact is long term. But we are absolutely dedicated in promoting Slovakia, in making sure we increase our international impact and brand. So I want to have as many Slovaks at the conference as possible, and I want to make sure that we are bringing the Slovak entities, whether it is business or individuals, not only to Prague but to the world. So while we started in bringing world to Slovakia, we are dedicated to that. But now we are also bringing Slovakia a little bit through the brand to the world.
Nice. So that was a pretty comprehensive answer. I wanted to touch on something that is very close to your heart, and I saw a change in you, over the last 2.5 years, and the opening of the office in Kiev, and the atrocity of the war that is still to this day, unfortunately, going on. It seemed like something ignited in you, that you felt this injustice, and you felt that you wanted to make the most amount of impact through your brand. Now, can I ask you, frankly, did you feel that this was your moment of legitimacy? Now our neighbor who needs us most, who is on our doorstep, is suffering in the most horrible, humanly unfathomable way, that I, Robert Vass, and my organization that has been committed to creating a freer world through transatlantic and security dialogue, has now a voice that can help affect that change more than it had in its previous 20 years.
Absolutely. You nailed it down, and you said it absolutely clearly. What happened 2 years ago was a shock to all of us. We never thought that...
Was it that much of a shock?
It was to some extent, because if you wanted to really try to analyze before the war, will it happen, will it not happen? If you would think rationally, all the rational arguments were against it.
Sure, I agree.
So to the last moment, we believe that, well, it's not going to be a full-scale war. It doesn't make sense. It would just unite Europe. It doesn't make sense. But there was a huge miscalculation on the side of Vladimir Putin. Obviously, he had different information. He thought that he can fix it in 2-3 days, and all conversation about Ukraine is over. But basically, what happened is that that was a consequence of failed deterrence. I think Russians felt that Europe is weak. There were changes in the governments across Europe. It was exactly the time when Merkel was already leaving out of office. There was Brexit.
Much disunity.
We moved from Afghanistan in a very chaotic way. U.S. was saying we want to end all the wars, and we are going to refocus our focus on domestic economic issues, etc. So he really thought West Europe is not ready to stand behind a country like Ukraine. But then Ukrainians have shown a tremendous courage to stand against a sheer aggression, and they showed Europe that we cannot let it go, simply, that we need to stand behind our values. We need to stand behind the basic principles of European peace and order, because what happened in Ukraine was not only an attack against the neighboring country, it was an attack against the very basic principles of European peace and order. And we have to defend the peace. If we want the peace, long-term and sustainable, we have to defend it.
So I think there's quite a lot to unpack there. The disorder and chaos in Europe is now rife. You see media constraints in Italy. You see potential media constraints in Slovakia. You see issues even in my home in the UK. Lots of strange policy driving asylum seekers to Rwanda. How nervous were you? 2 questions. How nervous were you that the US Congress wouldn't pass that 61 billion euro relief package to Ukraine? Number 1. And number 2, have you as an organization or as a person, Robert, been able to help maybe broker peace? And it wouldn't be an incredible story for Slovakia to be the peacemaker in this scenario, just to bring this to an end? Because you know what? Globsec did an analysis, and the least amount of sympathy for Ukraine in Central Europe resides in Slovakia. Poland will always show support. Even Hungary had a higher rating than Slovakia. So there's a sense of people's sympathy starting to die down and here. And obviously there's disinformation and cyber warfare, all the things that people may be not aware of. But so number one, how important was that relief package from the US? Because as far as I'm concerned, if the US had not ratified that, then Europe would have been in trouble. We wouldn't be able to find those funds. Number two, could you feel that you as Globsec would be an able mediator to try and restore some sort of semblance of peace to the region?
Look, concerning the relief package, I think it was absolutely tremendously important. If we would lose the peace in Ukraine, that would send the signal to everybody in the future that first, we are weak, we are not ready to stand behind our partners, and that would send the signal that the international order is over, and a lot of other actors would be testing the limits of international order. And you can basically see it internationally, that somehow a lot of actors are now testing on different fronts what are the boundaries of international order. And if we don't stick to it, it will fall apart. Simple as that. And if it falls apart in Europe and in our neighborhood, who will trust us whatever we say about Southeast Asia, about Taiwan, about anything else? So future deterrence starts in Ukraine, and if the U.S. Congress would fail to pass that support, it would have a tremendous negative impact, not only on Ukraine, because this is not about Ukraine. It would have a tremendous impact on the future of American leadership, transatlantic credibility, and the credibility of our institutions. But the negative side of all of this is that it happened too late. There is a lot of damage. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, dying because the package also from US is late, but we've been quite slow in supporting Ukraine. And this is not the support to Ukraine, as many say, is just prolonging the war. It's not true. If we would not support Ukraine from the very beginning, Ukraine would be over. They've been able 2 years on to stand against a bigger neighbor.
And perhaps Slovaks forget their history very quickly. Yeah. And that's perhaps something that I find very peculiar, that, how was it, Jan Palach, we don't have to go far back to remember the sacrifices that Jan Palach had made for the liberty of this country. And to go back to a mindset where perhaps that was leading towards that way. And I don't want to say pro-Kremlin, I don't want to say pro-Western. I think Slovakia has to find its own path, and it's neither of those. And I think it's yet to find its identity. But there is a sense, a global sense, that, you know, there may be injustice. There's definitely injustice in Ukraine. There's definitely injustice in Palestine, as we see today. And yet there are two levels of appreciation and two levels of support that are not the same. So conflicts are rising. The opportunities are there for China as well, and also a very large threat. And if we let Ukraine down, then the floodgates will open. But what I'm scared about is 2025 next year, and we're talking more about NATO spend. 75 billion for the UK will increase to 2.5%. We should be at a time of peace. We shouldn't be arming more. We should be able to resolve our things with discourse. I'm very disappointed in the International Court of Justice, United Nations, and NATO also, because they don't evolve the laws, change statutes, because Rome Principles, Geneva, this, that. No one's willing to change anything, and people aren't playing by the rule books. So if you're not playing by the rule books, our security isn't safe, isn't guaranteed. Am I safe here in Slovakia? I like to think I am, but that might not be the case in 18 to 24 months. Do you have a genuine fear?
I do actually, and I think that we are going into a situation in the upcoming years that will be even more dangerous because you see every year that, as I said, the boundaries of international order are being tested by many. And
do you think democracy is failing?
I think we don't have the strongest time right now, and I would not say democracy is failing. I think in long term, I think it has problems that we need to fix internally. Absolutely,
it needs an iOS reboot, like the phone,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we don't.
Yeah.
Why don't we change these things? Robert, you tell me. You're the policy advisor.
Yeah.
When you're speaking to NATO and there's vetoes and there's people abstaining, or the Security Council, where Russia still sits and obviously has its friends in the Middle East because they're selling, and in India selling half price oil.
If I would give you a clear answer, I would need to get a Nobel Prize. But
it'd be good for a Slovak to get a Nobel Prize.
So it's not easy. There are a lot of trends that are global that we cannot basically influence like this. You can count. You can talk about climate change, about the consequences it is bringing, and actually. Yes, we are going through, as a world, through major transformation. And I think our generation has a very important mission to go through this transformation in a way that more people will benefit than lose. And that's a tremendously difficult job. Here we need more international cooperation than ever. We need more international dialogue than ever. We need cooperation between public and private. And also, when you see the dynamism, when you see that how AI is changing almost everything, it's going to disrupt so many industries. It's going to disrupt geopolitics. That's why, for example, we are now creating a geotech center, how the new technologies are going to shape the geopolitics. Because I think that this century is not about the end of the American world, or it's not about the Chinese world. This will be basically end of the state and the government as we know it. Because basically in the boundaries, you cannot control things that have no boundaries in internet, in AI technologies. They have no physical boundaries. And that will be more and more difficult for governments and states to keep in control. So I think
we're going to have more chaos?
Well,
because the experts are saying lean in towards AI, which is a really soft term. I've spoken to a lot of AI experts, and they say they use this expression lean in, which is kind of a soft expression that means embrace it, but slowly and quietly and intelligently. But the fact is that it's learning smarter than you are, moving slowly. So adapting these kind of models into public governance is rendering people futile.
So what I think is happening is that the dynamics of the world in technology is huge, is just growing, but the dynamics in our governments is very slow, and the craters are opening, and we need to close that gap. We need to bring the governments, the state, with to a higher dynamism. We need to close that gap, and that's why we are establishing this geotech center, because
where
new
will
technology.
It be established?
We are establishing it in the United States. It will be run from US, but we'll have a lot of European operation. So what we want to do is we want to bring in key leaders in technological change, universities. We want to create, I would say, an international global coalition around this center. So the ambition is again big.
Yeah, well, good.
As always.
Yeah.
Don't
think small.
Yeah, and now just a little detour 20 years ago, I was 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 40 now. And exactly as as I was in the university, just imagine we have put on the name global. Yeah, so it was the ambition from the very beginning was huge. So we have not put on ourselves these boundaries.
Well, 20 years ago, I didn't imagine that I would be in Slovakia. So I don't know if that's a positive or a negative. In fact,
do you enjoy it?
There are times where I don't.
Why?
I tell you what, when I first arrived, I'm a very positive person from the outset, and I've traveled and lived around the world. I've lived in about 18 different countries and worked in about 18 different countries. And I'd recently lived 12 years in Dubai, coming from a place where absolutely nothing is impossible. Not always right, but nothing is impossible, to a place where nothing is possible. And there was a lot of skepticism, and I wanted to come and help people. And people were very surprised. I have an idea. I can come and help you. No, we're not interested, but I want to help you. And I had a lot of closed doors, slammed doors in my face. And I was saying to my wife, was like, I told you. And I was like, I don't want to believe I told you. I want to be an agent of change. I want to be an advocate for the future. And if I can't do anything in this country, the one thing I would like to do is help. And that comes at a price. It came at an emotional price. It was a very big impact on our marriage and our family, because in Dubai I was a big thing, and kind of a big thing, and whatever. And you know, you're treated on a meritocracy. Here was a very insular environment. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody works with the people that they know and they trust. That I'm an outsider. I'm not white. I'm all of the things that aren't inherently acceptable to Slovaks, right? After a while and working at the Council of Slovak Exporters, I like to think that we've built something that helps. Again, it's helping the country. It's not always popular because we put our head on the chopping block, but now I like it. It's taken, my children like it, and I think that influences a lot of my decisions. They want to be here. I say, let's move to London. They say, no, we want to be here, Papa. We like it here. It's safe. It may not be as dynamic as I would like it to be, but I want to be that person that maybe can help it become that dynamic, if I'm allowed. And yeah, more doors are open now than they were then.
Exactly. And I think that we need to open up the minds of Slovaks, because a lot of them, as we started this discussion, are thinking, this country is small, we are small, we cannot do things. And so it's a mental boundaries that we are putting on ourselves.
And no need.
There is no need. And the more we are inspiring for thinking big and great, the better. And the more inspiration it comes. There are a lot of great companies that have made it to global to the global stage, ESET. But there are a lot of, I see a lot of talents, a lot of startups that already don't have these boundaries, that they are proud Slovaks, but they try to think about it. They try to think about themselves, that they can change basically the world.
And I think this starts at a very young age.
Exactly.
My wife was taught not to dream, which is extraordinary. You know, we're taught in the UK, you can have whatever you want, like the Americans. You can be president, you can play football for England, you can do. My dream was always to be a presenter, and I've done that.
As Albert Einstein said, that logic will take you from point A to point B, but imagination will take you anywhere you want.
Absolutely.
And you have to be able to dream, to imagine, but not only a dreamer. Then you back it up. You need to back it up. You need to be able and have the courage to put that dream into reality. And don't think, if you think that it's a dream, oh, I'm not gonna do it because I'm from a small Slovakia and Bratislava. We are not going to do it. An
idea transcends a nation.
Exactly.
Look, he's looking fondly.
Ah, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's what you see.
I asked people on the street, and I said, I'm a very big admirer of the president, by the way, Madame Chaputova, because she was a very good icon for the country. I know that in some weird way, that's not a popular thing to say in some circles, but it's silly. She's a female. She's incredibly well put together, well mannered, well spoken. All of those. In the limited Slovak that I know, she's a wonderful advert for the nation. And I encourage girls that I have daughters, and I hear people that they don't think that they can be president. Why not dream to be president? Everybody can play football for Real Madrid. Everybody can be president. And I hope she's opened that mindset for the next generation of women as well. Idea transcends a nation. Why can it not be that you can dream about anything that you want, whether it's from Slovakia or Turkmenistan or Taiwan? It can be done as long as your dream is manageable. And I think you've done a great job in creating something that is sustainable, something that's international, something that makes a difference. I think that's probably what makes you happiest, going to bed at night knowing that you've made a difference. I'd like to do 5 little quick fire questions. We're going to take it a little bit lighthearted now because we've talked about some very serious things. And I was looking earlier that Yano thankfully gave me some lovely research about all the presidents and prime ministers that you've had. Macron's been here, Sandu's been here, Vučić, Zelensky, of course, the Pope, whom I'm a great admirer of. 3 prime ministers from the Czech Republic, Fiala, Babiš, Sobotka, even Orban has been. So you've had so many important people within the international political community and the private sector. Who is your favorite special guest and why?
This is very difficult to say, but I think my favorite guest was Macron last year, because many people are telling me, but probably that was the hardest to get to the forum. Macron, I would say it was the easiest.
Really?
Why? Because they knew the brand and they knew that they want to come here and they had a message. Also, they spent a lot of time beyond that speech at the conference, meeting on the sidelines with people, with think tankers, and he was listening. We had a very good lunch. We had a very good conversation about future of Europe. He was listening to the Center Europe. So he didn't come here as somebody who wanted to just preach and teach, but he was somebody really who wanted to listen, and he did it. He went out to the city for a drink with few people, etc. Amazing. So I say that's something that is great and remarkable.
So he was your favorite guest, and that was specifically because of his engagement.
And not only, but the reference on what he said at Globsec is huge in international media up to now. In
Le Monde, The Guardian, Telegraph, international news.
Exactly, and it's a reference point for the French diplomacy up until now. And I know from my friends that he's asking quite a lot about Globsec. He's asking about our expansion, about Prague. We hope to have him back. But I think that we need more people
like him.
Exactly. Good.
Who was the hardest guest to manage and why? Who was a real diva? Who was the I'm trying to think of who'd be a really good. Who was the Lady Gaga? Who was the real diva of? You can be honest. I mean, the amount of protocol for people who don't know, who listen to these podcasts and who watch my feed, won't know how much protocol goes into getting these people, and the months of planning that goes ahead, and the official letters that have to be sent, and the departments that they have to go to, and the approval processes that, and you of course have a personal relationship with quite a lot that you can push individually on the sidelines, but the process has to follow the system and the protocol. There must have been a couple who are a real pain in the ass. Who was the hardest diva to manage?
I'm not going to mention the name or names. On. No, I can't because this will go up. But I will say that the hardest thing is not individually to cater the needs and the protocol of an individual person. The hardest thing at Globsec Forum is that you have 1,000 of these people.
Yeah,
you have 1,000 people who have their own interests, changing programs, etc. So I would say people who are mostly changing the program are the Arab guests, because you never know until very end whether they will show up or appear or not, and they change the program 1 hour before, and then you have to jungle with it. So that's something very interesting or challenging for the team, but we were able to manage. And I would say the management of all of this is important, because if you do a rock concert and you have a diva, Lady Gaga, for example,
or Nicki Minaj, who didn't turn up.
So all you need to do is what he or she needs. You have a list, and you're trying to gather.
For rock stars, it's called
everybody else. Everybody else is adapting to that one person. Yeah. At the forum, you have thousands of people who are not adapting to each other, and that is much more difficult to manage.
Which is normally why you look so tired on the second day, normally. Okay, so that was a diplomatic answer, of course. I expected no less. Must be one very funny story that you've had, that you hang up your Globsec boots and I think, I've retired, I've been given the Légion d'honneur from Macron or from the next French president, and you've got all of these awards, the Chevalier or the Knight Honor from Ukraine, or whatever awards that may come your way for the influences that you have created through your brand. There must be a very funny story that you've had. Someone forgetting something, someone not turning up, waiting. What is the funniest anecdote you've had from any of the conferences? That
there are a lot of funny stories, but they were never fun when they happen. One of the story was that we were awarding a person at the gala dinner, and we asked an important guest to make a laudatio for the awardee. But somehow that person messed up the names.
Oh my word!
And she prepared the laudatio for a very different person, and she found out only 10 minutes before that.
Oh my God!
And that was you can imagine it was not funny at all.
But no one
10 minutes. But in 10 minutes we were forced to somehow brief her on all the achievements of that person and try to help to make the speech, etc. She managed at the end.
Wow!
But that was I wouldn't say that was funny at that time.
But no one getting locked in a toilet, or someone being stuck at an airport, someone getting arrested, someone not being allowed into Slovakia.
Not arrested. But locked up, yes. Locked up, yes. Especially during COVID.
Yeah.
So when we were testing people, I had a BBC correspondent coming to the forum, and she came from Middle East, traveled here, and we tested her, and we said, just wait, you can go in your room and wait for half an hour, and then she was positive.
Oh my God!
So she couldn't go anywhere. So she came here, locked up in the room. For 2 days, and then not 2 days. It was of course more, but so there are a lot of difficult stories. For example, one of the story when we were organizing the forum, and a few weeks before that, this volcano in Iceland.
Yes.
Do you remember? Eyjafjallajökull.
I do remember because it nearly meant that I didn't get married.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we were flying to Bali for our wedding, and we got delayed in Qatar, and all the flights were cancelled, and I had to persuade the Qatar Airways to let me on the flight that I already paid for.
So that is a funny story. So I have one funny story connected to this, but we had to. It was 1 week to the conference, and we had to cancel the conference and move it a few months later. It was really difficult. Every day we've been following the situation, whether people will be able to fly
and you
or
think
not.
COVID was even more stressful than that?
Yeah, also this one, COVID, but we went through different things. We went through changes of the government,
last minute.
last minute, last year as well.
Yeah. Revolving door.
But when this Volcano Eyjafjallajökull was there, and we had a crisis management team, and we were trying to negotiate with all the airlines, hotels, etc. That we move it. We communicated personally with everyone that we are moving it, etc. And we said, okay, we've been able to manage it. And on the next day, one person arrived by car. Where's the conference?
Oh my
And
God.
there was nobody, because he didn't check his phone. He was unreachable, and he came by car.
Oh my
and he
God.
was the only one.
He could have had a conference for one. God, so there's some funny stories. Okay. So there are two more questions and then we can wrap up. So, who would you most like to have that hasn't spoken, and why? Who would you think would add that extra punch? You mentioned the Arab world is quite complicated. I would like to see more people from South America, Latin America, the Arab world, even Asia as well. I mean, it's not my conference, it's yours, of course, but I'm just saying that from a personal level. If there was one person that you would think, oh shit, they'd be really good to have, who would it be?
So I would say that we have long-term vision and goals. We'd like to. It's not about an individual person. It's about creating a critical mass of important people who meet at the conference. So it's not about one person. It's about a critical mass. And what we are trying to achieve is that we try to increase the number of countries and dignitaries who come to the forum. And of course, the goal is the G7 countries, the President of the United States, of course, innovators like Elon Musk and others. So it's not only about politics; it's also about business. We'd like to have the business leaders, the innovators, the captains of the industries be present, because I think that the cooperation between public and private sector has never been more important than now, as we are going into such difficult period where private sector and private companies sometimes have bigger budgets than several countries combined. They are bringing the innovation. They are bringing the future. They are changing the world. They are changing the way we think, we communicate, we interact, we do business. They are really changing the world. It's not anymore the government and the state. And in this time, you need that cooperation between public and private more than ever.
These PPPs are, I've always said publicly that PPPs, public-private partnerships, are the cure.
They are critical. They are critical.
There's still so much disconnect. And it's not just here, it's everywhere in the world, because you feel that private sector shouldn't be bailing out governments, but then you find pandemics, and it's pandemics that are bailing out private sector, and then you have shock impacts. And
you pick a global problem, and you find out that it is impossible to solve without private sector being at the table. And unfortunately, there are two different tables: the governmental and the private sector, and there is not enough cooperation. If there is, it's many times just transactional. You need to create a partnership to sort out the problems of today and tomorrow. Climate change, it's impossible without the innovation and without the dedication of private sector.
And the
cybersecurity, defense and security, AI. You pick anything. You need to have the industries, the private sector present at the table.
You mentioned the President of the United States of America, and I think at one point there was an opportunity for Biden to come. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was. I can say now it was really close. It was at the time when he was in Europe, and Bratislava was considered very heavily. We had also an advanced team already in Bratislava. But then,
because the security services, they have to come and do the due diligence for the president of the United States.
Exactly,
Is very different.
That looked very positive, but then the program changed because they have met with Vladimir Putin in Geneva.
Yeah.
So once that was confirmed, this couldn't
happen at the same time.
At the same time.
So I guess the question would be, in the event that Biden doesn't win the next election, would you welcome the door to Donald Trump? I mean, you're an advocate for I can't say that word again. Plurality.
Plurality. Definitely, yeah. Look, whoever will be the president of the United States, we need to have that cooperation.
Even if he's going to shut down climate change and he dispels it as a myth, he'll remove the Paris Accord. He will say that global warming is nonsense. He will close the borders to Muslims. He will turn around.
If you want to be influential, you cannot create bubbles.
Sure.
So if you want to be influential in your own bubble or our own bubble, then you're basically uninfluential. So you need to be able to engage and try to go beyond the
mindset of that person.
Exactly, absolutely.
Which is why I interviewed Luboš Blaha on my podcast, and everybody said why. The person I would like to interview most would be Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. If I was organizing an event and Donald Trump was earmarked as a potential attendee, that would be box office. And here's the thing, there is Robert Vass, founder and president of Globsec, who's an advocate for global change. And then there's Robert Vass, the entrepreneur businessman that runs an organization that provides salaries for hundreds of people in 4 different countries, Kiev, Brussels, Vienna, USA. Donald Trump comes, bigger sponsors come, more money comes. So it's a win, right?
Yeah. I mean, of course.
The Donald. It's going to be huge.
You know, vision without resources is delusion.
Yeah, it's good.
So you need resources to follow that vision. And of course, you need the entrepreneurial mindset to be able to bring the resources to follow that vision.
Yep.
So of course, I think that's one of the very positive things about Globsec, that we have a very entrepreneurial culture. Mm-hmm. We have a very entrepreneurial mindset. That is something which is, I would say, Anglo-American. And that's why more than half of our resources and partners come from private sector, because they need to be at the table. Good. They need to be part of the conversation.
And then there's two last questions. Why has Zulf never moderated a panel at Globsec? He's the best in the region, and he's never been invited, Robert. I mean,
I'll invite you this to Prague.
Terrible. I've yet to moderate an event or a panel at Globsec, and premier moderator in the region. Okay, I put you on the spot there, but now I'll hold you to that one day. And lastly, you've talked about the vision for Globsec. Where do you see yourself 5 years? I mean, this is the usual podcast type question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I know you spend a lot of time now in Brussels. The headquarters will always be Slovakia. Prague is the next evolution. There's Kiev. There is Vienna. There's Washington. Where is the brand evolving?
We have a clear vision. What do we want to achieve? We want to strengthen our global outreach and brand. Where I will be physically, probably somewhere in the plane. Yeah. Well, I'm doing this already 20 years, and I have to tell you that, and that will be no surprise, that many times you have to reinvent yourself, because if you do something 20 years, you're sometimes you feel you're losing steam, and then something comes which
reinvigorates
you, and this is a constant process and challenge that is evolving, but we have a vision, and that vision is that we will strengthen our U.S. foundation, that the Globsec will be Globsec Forum will be an inevitable place for global leaders to speak with each other and to announce important global trends, to make public-private partnerships, it will be a platform for signing international memorandums to kick off some international initiatives, etc. So that's something we would like to achieve. That's something that we are dedicated to do, and I think we are on a good path. And in this sense, the support of Czech Republic, Prague, but also other governments that we are working with in Europe is great. And I think we are going the right way, and will always be a proud Slovak brand.
And the last addendum to this part, and then I know you have more meetings that are pressing in the coming minutes and hours. I've asked every single person that has appeared on my podcast what it means, what is brand Slovakia to them. And this is something that is inherently important to me, because my job, outside of my job, is to try and help promote Slovakia to the rest of the world, which is something that you're doing to your brand. I'm doing it through culture, through stories, through podcasts, through interviews with people like you, people of prominence, Slovaks that are making a difference, a change in the world. But if you had to explain the brand, if Slovakia was a brand, if there was something that you thought was tangibly Slovak that tells the story of Slovakia to the world, what is it?
Well, it's. I would need to think about that more.
Yarrow couldn't come up with an answer.
Yeah. I can say on brand of Globsec that the brand of Globsec shows where the ambition of Slovakia could be. A maybe physically small nation, but with big ideas, that is not fixed in the mental boundaries of the past, but is opening up the mindset to be able to change the world. And we have a lot of talents to do it. We have a lot of potential. We just need to open that mindset. I think we can do it, but we need more people who do it. And we have, but we have to create a community.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And on that note, I would like to thank Robert Vass, founder and president of Globsec, said correctly, I hope, for his candid honesty and your openness and joining me here today on Undiplomatic. It was an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in Prague. Very good luck for the next edition and all your endeavors, Robert. Thank you very much for making Globsec and Slovakia international through your vision, your ambition, and your willingness to put yourself on the chopping block. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much.
You have been listening to the Undiplomatic podcast, brought to you by Hyatt-Khan.